Hey, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the webinar this afternoon. I'm going to hopefully give you quite a lot of, I guess, strategy, thought process, stuff to think about in these trying times. So, what we're going to be focusing on today is, in fact, actually, just before I get started, just drop us up a hand that you can actually hear me, okay, and you can see the screen. It's got good afternoon. That's going to shift now to the Business Booster. So you now can see that. Brilliant. Everyone seems to be putting their hand up. Welcome to those of you that are looking and following us on the live feed. So this afternoon, we're going to be diving into how we can scale up business and essentially in a time of crisis. So, what is that going to mean to you in terms of your businesses, where you're focusing, and what you've had to deal with, and what you've had as challenges? And as we go through this afternoon, if you have anything that you want to ask, just pop it into the chat. We've got Sam in the background who is monitoring the chat, and she can nudge me. And at the the moments of opportunity, I'll actually just answer the questions that I can. Otherwise, I'll definitely get back to you post this event, so nothing will go unanswered. So let's dive into this straight away and start to focus on the business booster and what I'm aiming to focus on today. So I'm going to drop the video out so that doesn't become a distraction. And okay, so today's goals. I'm gonna start talking a little bit about mental strength and mental strength for business. One of the key things that I am incredibly familiar with, and for those of you who don't know, as a former military man, a veteran, I know a little bit about working in really tense and high pressure situations. With that in mind, I know a little bit about mental strength, and I'm gonna touch a little bit on where and how we can focus in terms of, I guess, improving our mental strength and what we can do to actually make a difference about that. I'm going to look at scalability and what it is in the business, whether that we're looking at the sales and profitability, the improvements of efficiency, and looking at the team. Throughout, I'm really going to challenge you to focus on your businesses right now and what it is in your business that you need to now focus on, where the opportunities are. And as you come across those, make sure you're getting the notes and make sure you're jotting down exactly what that looks like, because they're going to make a difference. But they're only going to make a difference if we act upon them. And that's the point. At the end of today, I want to make sure that you go away with quality actions that you've made a commitment to. Now, part of this, at the end of this session, there will be a survey that you can participate in, and I really strongly encourage you to. We always love the feed forward to know that what we're doing is right for everybody who is giving their time up. But also to that is I give away a free coaching session. Now, the reason I do that is to really drill down on what it is that you take away from today in terms of the actions and activities. And yeah, we might actually end up talking about how coaching might work for you in your business, and c'est la vie. But I don't do it with that purpose. I do it with the purpose of making sure that the information, the actions, the elements that you feel that you need to focus on, that you take away from this today, you're able to do just that. So who am I to sit up here today to basically offer you some insights? Well, the long story short is I'm a retired Army officer. I was served for 28 years, and during that period of time, I became a master coach. And then around about 8 years ago now, I left the military and I got started in my coaching practice. And to be fair, it's gone, from strength to strength. It's not an easy business to be in, but then I probably challenge the same for most of you to say that actually business full stop isn't easy necessarily to be in. But the reality and where I am today is I work with people in terms of developing their high performance, with business owners to take them to the next level, to unlock potential, to unlock the potential of their teams, to actually collectively and collaboratively have their businesses working at a far higher level of efficiency, and ultimately working without the business owners at the point that you become a proper business owner. So that's who I am. And if we haven't hooked up on LinkedIn, then please just drop that in a connection request and let's hook up on LinkedIn. And likewise, if you're listening to this live at the moment, then just give us an idea in terms of where where you are at the world. Again, we'll be monitoring that as we go through this afternoon. A few rules. So rules of the game. To get the very most out of this afternoon session, firstly, the main one is I want you to park two words that are probably the biggest limiting belief in business today. I know. Now, I'm going to discuss and give you insights of probably a whole raft of different elements that you will be familiar with. But I want you to park the I know and start thinking this afternoon in terms of a higher level of interest on what I'm offering and the context and how I potentially may package it. I'm also going to challenge you to think differently in terms of maybe some of what you're experiencing at the moment. And I might be quite challenging in a very direct way. Now, I don't mean to be, abrupt, rude or anything of that nature. But, in my coaching world, as my persona is that of the challenge coach. So I want to help you get a vision in terms of where you want to get to, but I want to challenge you in terms of stretching you to get there. So the other one is get rid of the disturbances. Get your phones onto airplane mode so you can be in the zone and focus on the important thing of scaling up your business. I hope to have a little bit of fun along the way, whether engaging on the chat or some of the cheeky stuff that I might do. And the other bit is participation. So, hopefully you've all got the workbook that Sam will have sent through on an email to you. Get that printed out because you're going to use that this afternoon. And for those folks who are listening on Facebook Live, what we'll try and do is make that a document that's available for the recording should you want to dive in and actually go through the assessments yourself. So, few rules of the game. I think it's important to get a real baseline in terms of how we get going so that you're in the zone. I can assure you I'm going to give you 120% this afternoon in terms of my participation. So I want to make sure that you do the same to get the most out of this. Okay. I think we'd all agree that, business is tough, let alone business in a pandemic, business in a lockdown, business during COVID-19 since 23rd of March last year. And there have been multiple different setbacks for many, many different businesses. Indeed, some businesses might actually have been in a place where they have thrived during this process and during this situation. But I think for a vast majority of businesses, it has been challenging. So why is it that some people can thrive in the face of adversity, whilst others, they struggle? They may even buckle under that pressure. And it's all about resilience. And this is where I was saying, my days on operations in Iraq and Afghanistan and Bosnia and Northern Ireland, you get a real sense of how this stuff turns up in your mind. So suddenly in the 23rd of March, when this all kicked off, I found myself in a place where the feelings that were starting to manifest themselves were familiar. But what was more important is I was familiar with how I could deal with them. And that's what I've been doing the whole way through. Indeed, actually helping multiple different clients with, whether it's pro bono sessions, whether it's crisis management and crisis planning. I was able to get myself in a place where I was functioning. Now, for various people, that comes in different guises. Just drop in the chat at the moment, what's that journey been like for you? Did you, if you were to score, that level of anxiety that you had when it hit, what was it then? And where are you now? As we, I think entered into, the third lockdown. The point is that resilience gives us the ability to suffer hardship and not falter. And it's one of the most important elements as to whether we succeed and fail in our pursuits in terms of achieving what our desires are. Now, you've all gone into business for various different reasons. And it's those reasons that can start to flounder when we allow fear at its root cause, and it manifests itself in many different ways, but at its root cause, fear creates that anxiety, it creates the worry, the concern. So it boils down to how we approach it. And what I want to do is share with you essentially 4 scenarios that you can start to deal with when, however that fear starts to manifest itself. And it might be a reflective opportunity here in terms of thinking back how it's manifested itself and where you are right now. But the first thing to recognize about fear, just pop into the chat box for me and just tell me, what do you think fear means? Just take a couple of moments and either and likewise on our live feed, put into the comments, what does fear mean? What does FEAR stand for you? And let's see what we come up with. Just pop that into the chat. Okay, you can start seeing some stuff coming through. The unknown, emotional responses, we're going to touch on that, absolutely. What else is coming out there? I'll just give you a moment or two just to start seeing some responses coming through. Yeah, inability to take the next step, absolutely. And keep them coming, by the way. There's an interesting one, face everything and roar. That's going to be one of the scenarios. So a really good share there. But here's my take on it. It's false expectations appearing real. Fear manifests itself when we see something. Fear is generally something that is likely, or we believe, not likely, but we believe is going to happen in the future. And it creates a false expectation in us. It creates that, that chemical reaction in our mind that starts to, pump us full of cortisone. And then we start to get stressed and we start to dive into the freeze, flight and fight, response. Now, the reality with that, when we get those feelings, often it's a false expectations. It's not something that we can actually say with any certainty is going to happen. It's something that we believe may happen in the future, but it becomes debilitating. Now, the reality on this is we need to start understanding how we can actually start to deal with this when it raises itself. Maybe go back to the 23rd of March when this first happened, and what was the response when you suddenly realize, I can't go to the office, I can't do business, I've got to furlough my team, I'm going to have to let everybody go. It manifests itself at the root cause in fear. So if we're going to start to strengthen a mindset that can actually deal with it, scenario one, I guess, for maybe very strong characters and those who have got that level of determination and resilience already is to get over it. Is to actually recognize that fear. Remember that phrase I had up just a moment ago, that saying, face the fear and do it anyway. And it's actually doing that, because the more you become familiar with fear and the more that you're able to actually fight through it, the better the results are going to be. Or maybe it's scenario two for you. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with Viktor E. Frankl. He was a prisoner in the refugee camps during World War II, in the Jewish refugee camps. And he's got a really great book that he's written when he came out. And one of the points that he wrote about in that book was, if we have a strong enough why to live, you can bear anything. You can bear pretty much anything that is thrown at you. So think about that in the business context. If you've got a strong enough drive to get your business through this, if you've got a strong enough drive to succeed in business, you can bear with almost anything. And yeah, there is a reality that things have been hard work, and I think most people would absolutely agree with that. But the fact of the matter is that if we apply ourselves to that hard work, if we fight through that hard work, the results that we can get can be astronomical. The third scenario is recognizing fear in its rawest terms, in terms of how it shows up as an emotion, and then applying an element of logic to what that emotion means. I often talk about and relate to the train of thought. And the reason I say that is, once you get onto a train of thought, you jump onto the train, if you want to look at it in that respect. And suddenly, once this train starts moving, it's very difficult to get off a moving train. If we identify that emotion early on, and we just say to ourselves, actually, I'm not going to gain anything from that, so I'm not going to get onto that train of thought, we can start to really understand how to deal with that emotion. But we can recognize that emotion at the very earliest point. And you can get to a point where you can program your subconscious, that your subconscious deals with that fear before it even shows itself. So scenario three is just recognizing that emotion, recognizing the logical approach to it. And the last one, scenario four, is really about killing the fear. It's about just actually shifting that whole context of fear, and maybe recognizing it in a a completely different way. There's a great example of this. A lot of people have a fear of public speaking, and when I coach people in terms of actually getting onto the stage, one of the things that I often talk about with them is recognizing how fear manifests itself. So when start to realize that fear is showing itself, how does it manifest itself in you? Probably, you get that churning in your tummy. You start to get flittering. Your palms get sweaty. But the other side of this one is, if you flip that, what does excitement feel like? You start to get the churning in your stomachs. You start getting that flittering fear and your palms sweat. They're both the same, but it depends how we interpret it. So we can kill the fear by interpreting it as we see fit. We can recognize it maybe as an excitement to get a new thing done, as an excitement to approach a problem and deal with it. So killing the fear is one of the ways that we can start to program ourselves. Now, the point on this is none of this stuff happens overnight. It just doesn't. It takes time. It takes practice. Things like meditation. What are your daily routines, your daily habits? So with that in mind, I just want to introduce you to the concept of getting above the parapet. Now, just as an explanation for you, those of you who will be familiar, a parapet is the lip of a trench, or it's the crinkly bit at the top of a castle. Now, the reason I talk about this, and I'm going to just give you a bit of an insight to, I guess, the trench situation. Now, when I was serving, if I was leading my men, but I didn't put my head above the parapet, I didn't look out over the trench, what were some of the challenges that I might face? Just take a moment or two just to fire some things into the chat. What are the challenges that I would face in my role as a leader? And in this case, I want you to think of this when we talk about it. It's going to be in your role as a business owner. But when you start to look at it in that respect, what are the challenges? What couldn't I do? What might I not be able to influence? What comes to mind? Let's just pop a couple of bits into the chat. Not moving forward. Absolutely not moving forward. Because you're not in a place to be able to see what's going on. You can't see what's ahead of you or surrounding you. You can't recognize any issues or challenges that might be in your environment. Absolutely. Absolutely. There's the whole point of, how well do you lead from below the parapet? What's that level of leadership going to be? Is it going to be, inspirational leadership? Just keep those comments coming through so we can see what's coming out. See, you're all feverishly typing away there, which is good. Yeah, a complete lack of what's going on as well in terms of around you. So the point is that below the parapet is not a place to be. And the reality that when we are below the parapet, so I'm going to put up this notional line, when we're below this line, I want you to think about this now. What we can experience and what we might see is blame, excuse, and denial. We might actually experience blame, excuse, and denial. Now, thinking about this in the flip side of that, when we go above the line, when we stick our head above the parapet, when we start to take on that responsibility, accountability, and ownership, we find ourselves in a much, much better place. But let me give you a little bit of context to the deeper meaning on this. And what I want you to do as I go through this is I want you to hold the mirror up and reflect for yourself. What does this look like for you? And then once you've done that, is think, okay, what does this look like for my team or my business or the environment I work in or my customers? So if we're below the line, one of the challenges that we face is we often find ourselves in a quizzing place of why. Why have we got to change? Why has this happened to us? Why have I got to do that? And if you interestingly, it creates an emotional response. It creates anxiety. It creates stress. Generally speaking, people default to not wanting to change. But when we shift the mindset to above the line, we start to think about the opportunities of how. Now, I'm big on how we use language. So as a coach, I will very rarely use the word why, because why just evokes an emotional response, and then we just end up digging ourselves deeper and deeper below the parapet. So I will always start to think about what smarter questions can I ask. The other point from below the parapet is we always relate to the past. Now, when I ask this or position this, how many of you maybe are stuck in the past? How many of you are, still thinking back to business pre-COVID and, wow, this has all happened and it's why has this happened? And, I wish it would just go back and, we can't change the past. There's nothing we can do about the past. We can take the lessons from the past, and the key then is how we actually apply the lessons, not the necessarily the experience, but the lesson. So the point here is then when we start thinking above the line, it's about the future. Now, as business owners and entrepreneurs, the interesting thing about the future is the infinite opportunities it presents. And think about that for the moment, the infinite opportunities of tomorrow. The decisions that you make this afternoon during this session with me can have a significant impact on tomorrow. It can actually have a significant impact in about, an hour and 30, 40 minutes time. The next point on this one is actually thinking about the dialogue that you have, the judging questions and the judgment that you hold maybe on yourself. I shouldn't have done that. Why did I do that? Why has it all gone wrong for me? Versus actually asking what I would term as learning questions, which goes back to the way we use language. Now, the point here between judging and learning is this ability to actually ask ourselves a much better, focus in terms of where it is we want to get to and what it is that we want to achieve. If you start asking greater learning questions, then you're going to get a greater outcome in terms of where it is you want to get to, because your mind is going to tune into that learning opportunity rather than clouding it with a judging question. So when you ask your team a question next time round that you might normally have defaulted to why, think about asking them a learning question. The other piece on this one that wraps this up in terms of your mindset for business is the difference between having a poor mindset and a wealthy mindset. Now, I don't know if you're like me, but I will, probably put my hands up and say that 8 years ago, I had a poor mindset, and I'm a long way off the entrepreneur and investor that I am today. And the reason I say that is my poor mindset was based on everything that I'd learned in my environment. I'm going to talk about environment in just a moment, but everything I'd learned in my environment, how it impacted on me. Mum and dad used to turn around to me and say, what do you think money grows on trees? That's way too expensive. Don't spend it all at once. Just give you a show of hands if maybe some of those terms resonate with you, because it's interesting when you start to look at it, and loads of hands going up. When you start to look at it in that respect, it creates a poor mindset. So we end up having a poor relationship with money. Debt is bad. We don't look at investment. We look at actually a scarcity mindset towards money. Today, having shifted that towards a wealthy mindset, I see money as a tool. I see money as an ability to be able to invest in the business, invest where I want to go to, and invest in other businesses for that matter. So suddenly you're looking at having a wealthy mindset, and that's something you've got to look at and tune into. So when we look at this combined in terms of this whole philosophy of above and below the line, we start thinking about, in terms of the fixed mindset that is the challenge below the line, we have to manage people out of that. And maybe even manage yourself, and that might be putting systems in place. It may be micromanaging teams to create a higher level of competence, to give a higher level of competence or confidence to move to actually having a growth and empowered mindset, which obviously is delivered through empowered leadership. So it'd be interesting as you reflect on this, where are you now? And just take a moment to have a look at this slide with regards to mindset in terms of where you are. Have you got a growth mindset or fixed mindset? Is there maybe a little bit of a meld between the two? But the reality here is having an understanding and holding that mirror up for yourself. You don't need to share this in the chat or anything, but knowing where you are means that you can make the first steps towards where you need to be. Now, I hope you're still with me so far in terms of this. I know it's a fair preamble to diving into business. And I just want to make sure that we're really, really tuned in that, your business is you, it's your mindset, it's your focus, it's your drive, it's your commitment. It's your ability to have that resilience we talked about at the beginning. So with that in mind, the next question really is, what path will you and your business now take? And I want you to think for a moment now about high performance. I want you to think about actually what it is that I need to do as an individual to start thinking about my performance. What are the high performance opportunities that are going to drive me? And I think as you start to see this list appear, where are the areas in this list that you might need to want to note down and actually determine, actually, that's what I've got to work on. I need to work on my communication. I've got to work on, my commitment. I maybe just need to be, a much harder working person, but working more smartly in my business. What about your battle toughness? I mean, let's be frank, over the last 12 months, I'm fairly certain that we're all fairly weary and tired of everything that's been going on. But imagine how weary and tired your teams are and how they're feeling. And they're looking to you now as the business owner, leader, executive, and managing director. So where are the areas that you need to drive your personal high performance so that you can turn up each and every day? And here's the thing. Don't allow what I'm talking about this afternoon to suddenly overwhelm you. Allow what I'm talking about this afternoon to inspire you and to actually just, do you know what? I'm going to go for this. I can see where I've got to start to work in these areas. I can see what it is that I've got to start to focus on in terms of driving my high performance. Combined with that is then when we start to think about lifting the potential. And when we start looking at lifting the potential, it's kind of, what is it within the business that I maybe need to start thinking about and start focusing on? How do I lift the potential for what we're doing in terms of, actually creating a much greater focus within, the organization? And exactly the same again, when we start to then, we're focusing on that high potential, high performance, and we're looking at how we can lift our potential. We can really start to get, as they say, grab the bull by the horns and really go for this. What does it mean? So if we look at this in the performance world, and that's the world that I'm in, if we look at this in the performance world, we're talking about driving performance. As we drive performance, we want to lift that potential as well. So we're taking advantage of those elements. And we will end up with this result trajectory and get better results for what we're wanting to do. So the take-home message from this is, what is it that you need to focus on in terms of your performance? What do you need to focus on in terms of your education? And I want you to just be tuned into that as we go through this afternoon and think deeply about some of the opportunities there that we're going to dive into. Let's put it in the business context then. So what is the size of the opportunity that you might be missing at the moment? Let's just think about what we've just said. Time, let's say over the next 90 days. What are the opportunities over the next 90 days? Give us an hands up at the moment if you feel you already know what your current trajectory is beginning to look like. If you've got an idea of where you're heading, you've got some, you've had a January start to the year, and now we're heading, who's hands up if you've got that level of focus already? Interestingly, only a few hands going up, so there's not quite so much there. So over time in that current trajectory, we want to achieve growth. So everything I'm going to talk about this afternoon, everything I'm going to share with you this afternoon, whether it's a strategy, whether I give you direction on how, whether I give you a tactic, it creates what we can see as significant opportunities. And these opportunities are opportunities that you need to grasp and take hold of. So if we think about every opportunity, the reality on this is, what is the actual cost of those opportunities that you're leaving on the table? What are the costs of those opportunities if you're not actually grasping the bull by the horns, if you're not actually taking that reflective time to see about where you are in your businesses right now, to think, what do I need to do next? Okay, look, fairly lengthy preamble, but I think it's really important to make sure that we set the scene, that we've got the, the right conditions in terms of you to be able to I guess, absorb what I'm going to talk about this afternoon. One thing that I hope will happen this afternoon is you'll have a series of BFOs, the blinding flashes of the obvious. You might well have already had some. And here's the thing on the chat, if you have a BFO, if you have a blinding flash of the obvious, share it. Write it down. It's a great way to start to reinforce it in your own mind in terms of where this is taking you. Let's get started. Where will you be this time next year? Where will you be this time next year? And in order to actually determine and start to get that vision clear in your own minds, I want you to think about 3 questions which will help you create ultimate success. And I'm going to ask you to answer these in just a moment, but I want you to contemplate and think about these for the minute. The first question is, if you were to know what your business looks like when it's done, what would that be? What does your business look like this time next year? What does your business look like maybe 5 years from now in terms of when you finished it? Where are you now? Where is the business right now? And that final question, and the one that I really want you to dive into, is if you think about it now, what's getting in the way and slowing you down or stopping you from getting to where you want to be? What's getting in the way, slowing you down or stopping you from getting where you want to be? Now, some of that might have to, be, it might be COVID. But nonetheless, one of the things that we can do is actually dive into, the ways in which we can work our way through that one. So I said I'd talk about a little bit about, the environment, and I want to talk about the identity iceberg. Now, the identity iceberg, the analogy is what we see above the surface versus what's below the surface is, the bulk of what we don't see. And that's the same, in multiple of different scenarios. So where we are at the moment is, for you, in terms of the mirror and what I see of you, and then what you see of your team is the actions, the decisions, and the behaviors. That's what we present above the surface. But when we go below the surface, we start to look at the skills. We look at the beliefs, the values, and the identity that you have. And these are born through the environment that you're in. Now, over the last 12 months, the likelihood is your environment might have changed significantly. And with that, maybe some of your identity, your values, your beliefs, maybe even some of the skills that you've either adapted or not adapted to have changed. But the net result of that is the results that you're getting or not getting. So I want to share a series of questions, and then you can answer these in just a moment. But what do you want to do that is better or different from that you have right now? And the reason I'm positioning these questions is because as we go through the next hour and a half, I want you to get really, really clear and clarify what those things are you need to focus on. So the second question then, let's put these up. The second question is, what do you need to do repeatedly to get good at it? That's going to be focused on your skills, your beliefs. These are what you hold true to you, and they're backed up by evidence that you have. So what are the beliefs that you have? What are your values in terms of the human principles, the universal human principles that you have? How do they turn up and stack up in terms of where you are right now? And then when we start to look at your identity, it's made up of your I am and I am not statements. Your I am statements are a statement of who you aim to be. Your I am not statements are a statement of who you have no intention of being, an away from versus a to, a towards focus there. So who is it you want to be? And then what's your environment like right now? What's the environment like in your office, in your workplace, at home? Is it one that is inspiring you? Is it one that is getting you through these challenging times? Or is it one that isn't? The people and things that surround you and influence you. So as we go through, I want you to just bear these questions in mind. And you're going to have a look at these questions in just a moment in the workbook. So before we dive into the first session, the first workbook session, let me just introduce you to the 6 steps. And some of you may well have heard me talk about this before. I can see some of you are recognizing the call today, and some will be new to you. But the idea here is building and developing the business, being able to scale up the business. We need to start firstly with the solid foundation, a foundation where we are deliberately focused on eliminating chaos, where we are focused on developing a commercial aspect to the business. We're going to look at niche. So, we get this foundation, and whilst we're building that foundation, we need to know, what are we doing in terms of our marketing? How are we creating predictable cash flow for our business? How do we become a profitable enterprise? One that is cash rich, that has a solid cash flow, and which many businesses today struggle with. That will lead on to high levels of efficiency, because we then start to focus on the leverage. We start to focus on bringing systemization into the business. We start to focus on the business that starts to work. And ultimately, as we bring team in there, it's working without you. Now, those first 4 levels are really the area that we need to be driving and focusing on, and something that you can make some dramatic differences on just over the next 90 days. Because thereafter that, we can then start looking at, how we create this well-oiled machine, creating that bringing a general manager in to take over from you if you don't have one already, to actually start to focus in terms of actually, getting to the point where you can have some freedom. Now, as I go through this afternoon, I'm going to get you to score yourself on these 6 steps. And you'll notice on the back page of the workbook, there is the business scorecard. And as I go through each level, I'm going to ask you to do, the first bit we'll be doing is, can you score yourself on mastery? Can we score ourselves on niche? And I just want you to go through there and give yourself a score as to where you are right now, today in your business. Now, here's the word of warning on this one. And please excuse my military humor coming out here. But I implore you not to be a self-licking lollipop. If you sit there and you put a bunch of 8s and 9s and 10s because that makes you feel good, then that's fine. But I want you to be really critical in terms of where you are right now. Because the one thing that I can tell you, and I can tell you from experience of having worked with hundreds of businesses and seen how these strategies, what we're going to talk about and touch on this afternoon, work in a business, getting to a 10 really does start to get this business singing along in a really sharp way. You might even decide, I'll score myself at a 5. And just bear this in mind, a 5 is middle of the road. It's not a bad place to be. So don't be a self-licking lollipop. Really focus in terms of actually, where am I on these and what am I scoring on? Because when you identify these areas to focus on, that's where the action and activity can come in post what we're going to talk about this afternoon. Hands up if that makes sense, please. I don't want to be sharing that's not making any sense. If you go, brilliant. Okay, I can see some hands going up. That's great. That's absolutely great. Okay, so I'm going to talk through mastery first. We're going to get the first level done, and then I'm going to set you off to have a look at the scorecard and actually do the first session. So mastery, this is a commercial enterprise, and it boils down into 4 key areas: destination mastery, money mastery, delivery mastery, and time mastery. Now, just to put this into context, most businesses will generally find themselves in a place like this, where you've got real big focus in terms of the operations. There's a little focus, and to be honest, I think there's even less than this may depict in terms of marketing. And then we've got this, focus on financials in the background. The reality on this is, by focusing on the foundation, we get the balance right. We get it balanced in terms of what we're doing in marketing, finance, so that everything combined gives us the good solid foundation from which to grow and build our business. So if I was to talk to you first of all about financial mastery, knowing your numbers, who has got a real clear focus in terms of their break-even side of life, who knows their profit margins, maybe on the profit margin side of life, how clear is your a marginal cash flow? Do you understand marginal cash flow in your business? And what about cash flow mastery? Now, this isn't just a case of writing out a cash flow forecast, but this is actually, do you have operational cash flow in your business right now? Has your net cash flow grown since January 1st, since we came into this new year? Has that cash flow actually increased, or has it been decreasing? Are you measuring that? What about the budgeting and forecasting? How are we looking in terms of budgeting and forecasting? Do you have KPI mastery in terms of actually measuring the key numbers within the business? And what about your debtor days, your credit control? How good or bad is your credit control in the business right now today? And it's really important to measure yourself against those areas. If your financial mastery revolves around how much is in your bank account today, then we need to work on this. And there's some great stuff that we can start to focus on in terms of actually, starting to understand what our numbers say. Here's an interesting thought for you to go away and think about. Just out of interest, any accountants on the line? Any accountants on the line today? No hands going up. Okay, so as a business owner, what's your language? In financial terms, in money mastery terms, pop into the chat box. What's your language? What language do you talk in money? What language do you talk in money? Just pop that into the box for me. If you don't know, put a question mark in. That's fine. If you're uncertain where I'm going with this, it will become clear. What do we have? What's your language? So we get some stuff in the chat. Okay. Cash at Bank. Yeah, that's starting to come through. Cash at Bank. Okay, so if I was to say your language is profitability, who would agree with me? Hands up. In business, a business owner, talks the language of profitability. Who agrees with me on that? Just put your hand up. See how many hands go up there. Okay, so we've got a few hands going up. So the point is that generally speaking, most business owners talk profit. The challenge is when we talk to an accountant, they talk history. They're talking about what the numbers tell us. So they're never really totally comfortable in terms of us talking profit, because we are often talking about the future and future profits. But then you've got the banks. And what are the banks talking? The banks are talking about debt. The banks are talking about how well your business is able to pay off what it owes, how well your business is able to actually, have money moving through the bank, because every time there's money moving through the bank, it's making money. So what you have is 3 different areas of your business all talking a different language. So we need to now start to understand the wider language of money. We need to understand, how do we, approach the bank or financiers? How do we engage our accountant that they do and tell us so much more than maybe what they're telling us at the moment? So financial mastery is absolutely critical. Moving on from that is delivery mastery. And delivery mastery is about the consistency and the foundation for healthy growth. Now, there's a guy called Professor John Gattarona, and he came up with this concept of perceived indifference. Now, perceived indifference is where your clients, your customers, believe you just don't care. Now, when he did his study, he came out with 68% of people would leave the business just through perceived indifference, 14% because of a product or service differentiation, 9% would end up leaving for competitive reasons, which is acceptable, 5% are referred to a competitor by a friend, and 4% are just natural attrition. So then there's a 68% of perceived indifference. So what is it that we need to do in the business in terms of delivery to overcome perceived indifference? What do we do in terms of creating what I would term as the critical non-essentials, the small things that make a massive difference? Where's that opportunity in your business right now? The other part of the foundation is time mastery. And what I want you to do is just have a quick watch of this. And then when you've watched it, just pop into the chat what you want.
This morning I got up and got ready quickly because stuff done. I sat down at my desk to start getting my stuff done, and I spilled my coffee, so I got a sponge to clean it up, and I figured I'd take an extra minute to clean the whole desk because a clean desk would help me get my stuff done. When I was finished, I realized I hadn't eaten anything, and I didn't want to be hungry while I got my stuff done, so I went into the kitchen and I was out of cereal. When I got to the grocery store, I remembered a bunch of other crap I needed to get, and I figured I was already there, so I did my shopping for the week so I didn't have to worry about it while I got my stuff done. When I got home, I didn't feel like cereal anymore, and so I made an omelet and I did the dishes so I wouldn't have to do them after I got my stuff done, and then I went out to get some oil from the hardware store because my desk chair is kind of squeaky and I didn't want to be distracted by a squeaky chair while I got my stuff done. When I got back, it was getting kind of late, and I knew I wouldn't be able to get my stuff done today, so I started watching the Twilight Zone marathon on TV. I just have to make sure I get to bed early because I want to be well rested tomorrow so I can get my stuff done.
Hands up, any procrastinators in the house? Brilliant. Listen, it's a little bit light-hearted and a bit humorous. The guy who does these, he's got loads of on YouTube. They're really, really quite clever. But if you look up procrastination, it'll probably be one of the main ones that comes up on YouTube. So time efficiency. It's really more so about self-mastery. You can't manage time. Time will it's perpetual. It's going, once it's gone, that's it. But what is interesting is actually self-mastery. And when you look at this, time target, the area that we want to be focusing on is kind of like getting into the zone. You're working on not urgent, but it's important. Now, the reality in terms of these percentages is where we often find people working. The likelihood is, sadly, you're just spending 20% of your time in the zone. 60% of it is in demand, where other people want your time. Other people are invested in your time. 10% is probably delusion, where you think you're working on things that are urgent and not important. Kind of the procrastination zone, if you will. And then there's those distractions that you have, not urgent and not important. And the interesting point is this is often other people. Now, the challenge that we have here is that when we find ourselves in those outer rings, we are perpetuating now. You are just wading through treacle. That's it. You are just wading through treacle. Whereas actually, when we start to focus on the zone, we start to focus on creating the future. And the interesting point is you're going to shift from owning a job to owning a business. Now, that might sound quite stark and a bit of a slap in the face for some folks, but it's the reality. The vast majority of business owners I work with, and whether that is a multinational multi-million pound business, or whether it's a guy who started a business, the reality is that we end up with this misbalance of where we're working, and we don't get ourselves into the zone where we add the future value of our business. So look, dive into the workbook. And what I'd like you to do in this first session is just go to the mastery column. So the foundation base of the business scorecard on the back page, and then just answer the questions in section 1, the self-mastery. Just go through those questions in section 1. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes with a bit of mood music on in the background, and then we will dive on to the next part. So over to you, folks. So frogs come up as a question. So I'll answer that one just as you round off. So when we look at a frog, it's based on a book by Brian Tracy called Eat That Frog on Time Mastery. And we determined that the frog is essentially the most distasteful thing we have on our agenda to do. And it always gets put to one side. So if each day we start a day eating a frog, doing the most distasteful thing, the thing that we've been putting off, our productivity is going to go through the roof. So that's the analogy of eat that frog. That's what the frog means. Okay, team, start rounding off. Okay, so let's have a look again. Hopefully a good reflection there in terms of how you're scoring and how you've scored. What I want to move on to now is niche. So niche is about it's about marketing. It's about being out there, but it's also about creating predictable cash flow. You see, the most businesses that I work with, they'll always start off with this default setting in terms of actually it's about the price and about how much they're charging. And sometimes it's a price war. And there are multiple different businesses that will have a look at just that I can't compete on anything else but price. Now, the sad fact with that is it then becomes a race to the bottom. If we're competing on price, all we're going to do is beat our competitors to the bottom. You're not going to make profit. You'd probably then undervalue what you do. So in creating niche, we need to make sure that we're focusing on terms of the aspects that make us stand out. What are the benefits of what we do? One of the things I often talk about, and I might touch on this later again, if you go to your website and have a review of your website, and the question I would ask is, how close are your eyes? Not physically how close your eyes are, but if your website is full of we and I, you're missing the point in terms of your uniqueness as a business, because all you're doing is talking about your credibility. Does that make sense? So the reality of what we want to start to focus on is, what is your uniqueness? What is your unique selling proposition? What is it that makes you stand out in the marketplace? Now, in concert with that, the next thing you can start to focus on is creating a guarantee. The guarantee can be something that is whatever you want it to be in a business. Actually, here at Action, we've got I've got a guarantee in terms of guaranteed results or your money back. And the reality on that is, when you're working with somebody, that's a pretty stiff guarantee to put down on there. But it's there because I'm confident in terms of my ability to get results with those that I work with, assuming the activities that they agree to do are undertaken. If you take a look at your business right now, what are the areas and where are the areas that you can put a guarantee in? What type of things do you do? What services do you provide What products do you provide? Not warranties, by the way, but where you can actually guarantee an outcome. And the reason most businesses don't like to do it is because, well, what happens if I've got to revoke the guarantee? I'd ask you just to review over the last 12 months, or maybe go further if you need to. How many complaints have you had and upheld? And if your complaints are minimal in comparison to the amount of business that you've done, you've got room for guarantees, I assure you. And I assure you also that your competitors are probably not putting those guarantees up there, in which case that becomes really valuable in terms of that marketing. And we will touch more on marketing a little later as well, when I go talk a little bit about the digital side. The other bit I want to talk about is in marketing. It's probably not something that general marketers would normally bring up, but I want to talk about storytelling. And I want to talk about getting away from the I and the we in your website, in your marketing media, in your copy. But I want you to focus on 3 characters. I want you to focus on the hero. I want you to focus on the villain, and I want you to focus on the guide. Now, before I go on to give you insight in this one, just drop into the chat, which of those 3 characters does your business represent? Is your business, I'll say villain first. I think we all know your business isn't the villain. But is your business the guide or the hero? Where do you reside? Is your business the guide or the hero? Just drop into the chat where you see your business residing. Is it the guide or the hero? Question mark. That's cool. If we don't know, that's fine. I am going to share this with you. Where else do we feel? Again, remember we said at the beginning that 100% participation. You get your brains engaged with what we're doing, and you share those comments in that. It's gonna make this for a much better audience participation, and obviously cementing the learnings that hopefully you take from this. Well, look, here's the thing. Most business owners I talk to think that their business is the hero, but the reality is your business is the guide. Now, there's a great book. Let me share the book with you. There's a great book out there by a guy called Donald Miller. And the book is Building a Story Brand. I implore you all to go and read it, because what he talks about is actually, if you're the guide, if you're Yoda, for instance, then you're guiding your hero, which is your customer, which means that you identify what their villain is, what's the problem they face, and you have a solution to guide them through. Yeah, it's a great way. Life is built on stories. Everybody likes a story. So story branding your business is a very simple way to maximize the way in which you start to resonate in the marketplace. Dive onto my website and have a look at it. I'd like to think that my website is done. We've done some work in it with regards to above the fold. So what you see on the screen, it strikes a question that immediately tells you, actually, I see where he's going with this. I don't strike a question up there telling you, everybody, how good I am and that I'm the champion and the best high performance coach on the planet, because you're not going to do any business with me. You're not interested in that. And to be fair, I'm not interested in that. But what I am interested in is being able to help solve and guide you, the business owner, through problems. So that book, and Sam's put it up there in the chat. So Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. Go get it. Go read it. Okay, let's do a minute. So work session 2 now on the book, or in the workbook at the bottom there. Let's go into work session 2. I'll just give you again a couple of minutes just to get through that one, and then we'll be diving on to the next element in niche on marketing leverage. Okay, so I've got a short piece I'm going to take you through now, and then I'd suggest we're just around about the hour in, so we'll take a quick break, grab yourself a drink of water or a cup of coffee, whatever, and then we'll dive into the second half. So I want to just take a moment now to talk about creating marketing leverage in the business. Now, the interesting point with this is this what I'm going to share with you is pretty powerful when it's applied in a business, and I can share that with you from a place of having seen this done multiple times. Now, the reality on it is it's not going to be a quick fix for you, but what you can start to do is get the measurements that I'm going to talk about in place pretty soon. And actually, it might be quite a quick fix when we talk about some of the aspects that you can focus on. There is a challenge that you might actually not be ready for it at the moment. And again, that's something we can dive into. It's a conversation that we can have. But just, I'm sorry for those of you that aren't car buffs, but can anyone tell me what the similarity is between these two cars, the R8 and the VW Golf? Anyone tell me what the similarities are? Just pop it into the chat. Any car buffs that might be on the call with us, or maybe owners of either of these? What are the similarities? Why am I putting these up? Okay, made by the same company. Red. That's brilliant. Do you know what? I hadn't even seen that. Red, like it. Yep, they're definitely similar because they're both red. They're both red. Anyone else? Okay, here's the similarity with these two. They are both different car companies, essentially, but they both sit on the same chassis. Now, which would you prefer? Now, the reason I talk about this is because what I want to share with you now, we call it the 5 ways, and I'll put it up on screen. And it's where we focus on 5 key areas of the business. Now, the reality is, and I dare say, I'll ask you all now, in the red areas of knowing the number of customers, turnover, and profit, hands up if you already know those figures in your business. If you know how many customers you got, how much turnover, and what your profit is, hands up if you know those figures already. Good. And actually comforting to know that there's a fair few hands going up there now in terms of knowing those numbers. But the reality on that is those numbers or the customers, the turnover and the profits, they are the result of an outcome. They are the result of other action. Your customers are a result, generally speaking, because of the marketing that you're undertaking and the marketing that you're doing. So what I want to share with you this afternoon is what happens when we put some numbers to this. So let's have a look at this in the first instance then. Let's say, for instance, on an average, let's say, an average week, you're a business that's got 4,000 leads coming through. Well, it can be a week, a month, a day, whatever you want. It could be a year, doesn't matter. But over that time period, you've got 4,000 leads coming through. Now, you already know of the 4,000 leads that come through each month, what your conversion rate is. Now, you'll start to see as I go through this that, actually one of the challenges is knowing the numbers. But if you've got a CRM, if you've got Salesforce, Infusionsoft, HubSpot, a multitude of others, you probably find you've got the ability in the back end to get this dashboard up and running so that you can see the leads coming through. You can see what the conversion rate is in order to then determine that actually, with that conversion rate, I get 1,000 customers. Moving on from that, we can then start to identify, well, if I've got 1,000 customers coming through in this time period, they come back and spend twice with me. And each time they spend with me, it's an average of £100. My turnover is 200,000. And again, this is across the scope of your business. You can, put a deep dive into a particular avenue of your business and do the numbers. But these are average numbers. They're still very powerful in terms of the outcomes and output that you can have from them. So we now know we've got a business of 200,000. We know that our margin is 25%. So that's where we're then able to identify that actually we've got a profit of 50,000. Now, if you've got a focus with regards to putting strategies in place, but absolutely focusing on these, here's a question for you. What would happen if we just had a 10% increase in each? Now, show of hands, please, if it doesn't need, whether it's a percent or 10%, in these 5 areas, after today's session, could you go away and work in these 5 areas to increase the percentage of each? Hands up if that's a yes. Good. So I'm seeing, it's interesting. I'm not seeing all the hands go up this time, but I'm seeing hands go up. So there's an element of doubt or skepticism with regards to this. And I wanted to tell you, out and out that actually, well, let's work the numbers and show you what I mean. I think that picture paints 1,000 words. So the reality on this is if I have 4,000 leads. So now if I focus on 10% increase on my lead generation, so I might put a marketing campaign in there. I could be a coffee shop in town and decide, well, actually, I'm going to go and put out for a free coffee voucher in order to generate more leads. The reality is, if I do that and apply that in a month, I can get 10% more. I can absolutely, I know I can do that. I know I can do that because I've done it with multiple businesses in the past already. But what about the conversion rate? Well, what about if I go and, look at my database and start to maybe, talk to the database more often? What about if I do sales training? So I train my team in better, processes and scripts at the cash point in terms of how they can, convert a client, or through our sales process, or sending out a tenure, or, doing a proposal. Bottom line again is that we can convert or increase that conversion rate. The outcome of this again is 1,000 new customers. When we go up by 10% to 27.5%, we actually increase it by 210 customers. So the same again in terms of the number of transactions. What could we do just to increase those transactions by 10%? What activities, actions in marketing could we do? What could we do with our database? Have I got a database that I talk to right now? Could I go tomorrow and send out an email to my database to encourage them to join me, or to come back to the business for a further transaction, whatever that might look like? And in doing so, can I increase the wallet share? So when they come back, can I increase what they buy from me by 10%? So 10% on 10% in terms of the turnover suddenly is 92,000 increased revenue. What about the margins? Let's increase the margins to 27.5. No, I hear you shouting, we can't put our prices up. Well, that as may be the case, but can you stop spending your profit? Can you start to have a look across your business in terms of your, expenses, your fixed and variable costs? Can you have a look in terms of what you're doing, with accounts payable? How quickly you're getting your invoices out? What are you doing in terms of inventory control or work in progress? When we start to focus on both sides of your profit pie, the slices of profit that you get from your customers are eaten into through the expenses and how you spend it within the business. So how tight do you put your shoestrings on that, your purse strings on that? Can you increase the margins by 10%? Well, again, the answer is absolutely yes, you can. So you can go from profit from 50,000 actually to 85,000. Now, the interesting point on that is this is a 61% increase on 10% in 5 areas. It's a compounded effect. Now, what I want you to do next, I want you to maybe have a look, and whilst you're doing this, let's take a break. So I'm going to put probably 10 minutes or so on the, well, let's have 7 minutes. We'll have a 7-minute break to grab a drink, but to complete this. Now on section 3, I want you to again go to your workbook, and you'll find that you've got this here. This is the 5 ways chart. And what I want you to do is I want you to focus on the 5 ways chart. If you don't know the numbers, then have a look at what those numbers look to be. Or it may be that you want to make some assumptions of what you want those numbers to be, and then make some forecasts. And in the gray columns in the middle, I want you to think about what are the strategies that I can actually apply to those each of the 5 ways. What type of things can I do? And I'm going to come back in a short while, so I'll grab a drink, and then in about 5 minutes now, I'm going to come back and just talk you through some of my ideas and see what that looks like. But for the moment, let's dive into that session 3, but in conjunction with taking a quick break. So 7 minutes. I put us as coming back at 14:16. It's 14:09 at the moment. We'll come back at 14:16. I'll see you in a minute, folks. Hey team, hopefully you got yourself a drink, fresh bit of water. Just for your information in the chat, I've just put down a few suggestions for each of the 5 ways if you were struggling with some of the strategies, so looking at lead generation, some ideas down there from, direct mail to, salespeople training to referrals, looked at the conversion in terms of sales training, scripts, guarantees, and so on. So, do take a quick look down through those. You can always cut and paste that and drag it onto a document of some description to have a look at later. But some ideas to get you thinking about what the 5 ways can look like in your business. Hopefully that's useful for you all. So has everybody got I guess a glass of water or a drink? We're all good to go again now. As that should show up in the chat. It might be that the chat is, let me just try again. Make sure that you get it. Don't worry if you don't get it, because we'll absolutely send out an update of all of this afterwards. Let's see. So hopefully that's turned up. Brilliant. Okay, so a little bit more than just in terms of niche. Niche is obviously, you can imagine it's a big area. It's a big focus. You know, generating leads and getting business is one of the things that we want to focus on. So just a couple of things to be aware of. There is no doubt. I think even the most dogged, avoiders of social media over the last 12 months has probably found themselves in a place where they've at least had to take and dip their toe into it to have a look. And I think it's just remembering that, you know, the multiple different channels that we've got is that it's not one set of copy, one shoe fits all. It's multiple different ways in which you've got to communicate. You know, what you say on Facebook is going to be something completely different from how you would, you know, verbalize it or post it on Twitter. So it's important to make sure that, you know, when we start to utilize and do utilize it, you know, multiple different platforms, but remember, the likelihood is, unless you've got a massive marketing team, you're not likely to do all of these things really well, but you'll do some of them well. One of the things that I think is really important, and it's a great suggestion, is identify what's going to be the best platform for you and then put 80% of your time into that. I'll give you an example. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. You know, over the years, I've done a lot of stuff on all of the different platforms. I've got access on all the platforms, but I predominantly focus my attention on LinkedIn. I spend 20% of my time on the other ones, predominantly on Facebook. As today, I'm live broadcasting on Facebook today. But when you look at that in that respect, it will help you get a focus on the results that you're looking for. The other one to remember is being really clear in terms of, you know, what Google offers. We can't escape the fact that Google is the the biggest search engine in the world. You know, what's the second biggest search engine, by the way? What is the second biggest search engine, by the way? So the second biggest search engine is actually YouTube. YouTube has got a huge amount of search on there. Interestingly, someone's put Bing up there. One of the things to remember on Bing is everything you do on Google, replicate on Bing. So if you've got your Google Places, go to Bing and make sure your business is registered on Bing. They mirror each other. But the reality on that is that Bing gives you another percentage of search criteria, because there are a whole host of people who work, you know, specifically on the Microsoft platforms who, you know, through the platforms direct straight into Bing. So, you know, Bing is another opportunity there, but it's making sure that we're optimized on our websites. Now, there's loads of chat about there in terms of SEO and metadata and, you know, everything else that goes in the background, and that's all good stuff. But it starts with making sure that our messaging, that, you know, story brand I talked about, it resonates in your marketplace. You can have the most SEO optimized website in the world, but if it doesn't resonate out there, if people aren't finding it because they're not reading or relating to it, it's irrelevant. So it's really important just to have a look at that digital stance and where you stand. With that in mind, I want you to grab your phones, get the QR code, get your camera and take a photograph, and then go and test your site and see how you score. So I'll leave that one up for a moment, but just grab your phone, point the camera at the QR code, and it will bring up the website. And what you can do is put your domain name in there and then have a look and see how you score. And I'll be interested just to see, once you've done that, pop your scores into the chat and see how well you did. Because it'll be interesting to see just where you are right now, how Google is scoring your website and what that looks like. TikTok. I haven't ventured onto TikTok yet. I've seen a lot about it. I tell you what I have ventured onto, which is one to look out for, and again, it's massive. Is one that's new, that's called Clubhouse, and it's an audio chat rooms. But the quality of people that are turning up on Clubhouse is off the charts. You know, you go into rooms and have conversations, and the conversations that I'm having recently with people like Grant Cardone and Rob Moore. These are incredible people in terms of the business development and personal development world. Definitely worth a look at. You get some incredible people up there, and they're just sharing. They're just sharing. Have a look at Clubhouse. If you look at Clubhouse and we're connected, and whether I've got your phone number or whatever that might be, we'll be able to swing you an invite. So definitely worth a look. It's brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. So what are we looking at scores wise then? Is everybody got access to that? So what are those scores looking like? And it's interesting when we start to have a look at this, because we want to get the best that we can in terms of our performance of the website. Hey, look, if you're having troubles getting onto it, don't worry. When we do the follow-up email on this one, we can make sure we send you the hyperlink so you can dive onto it. But yeah, it's important, and it's a great way of just checking how you're actually performing out there in the digital world. But I want to spend a few moments just talking through, if I may, developing your marketing campaign. And it's an interesting one. At the moment, hands up, who has a marketing plan? And what I'd like you to do, once you put your hands up or down in terms of whether you've got a marketing plan or not, is tell me, on average, how many hours a week marketing is undertaken in your business? How many hours a week marketing is undertaken in your business? And how many pages are in your business, or your marketing plan? Not your business, but your marketing plan. How many hours marketing in your business per week into the chat, and how many pages in your plan? And then times the hours by the pages, and it'll give you an idea of the level of importance that you've got with regards to your marketing and how well you're doing. If you've got a 1-page plan and you're doing an hour a week, you can get the idea where I'm going with this. So your marketing and the imperative of your marketing is a direct correlation to how much time you put in there, and then how much you've got in terms of your written plan, because it makes a difference. As you're doing that, the first question we want to look at in terms of it's who makes I guess in terms of your target market. What are the various segments within that target market? What are the niches or groups that you can go for? Who makes up your who? Who are your ideal customers? Now, there's an interesting concept here when we look at the ideal customers. Who's graded their customers? Who's had a look at their customers in such a way that they say, these are the raving fans. These are the people that really make a massive difference in my business. Oh, and these are the ones that I can't deal with, and the ones that we haven't done any business with. When we start to measure and have a look and determine what level of clients that we've got in the business, the reality is the clients that we can't deal with, if we look at that, Palow's law of 80-20, the likelihood is they take up 80% of your time and offer you 20% of revenue. So when we start to look at this, who are your clients and where do you find them? Now, you can go really wide on this in terms of the segmentation, or you can go and actually do a really deep dive and really niche and have a very, very targeted market. But who is the ideal target market for you? Where do you find them? So the next one, when we've looked at who, is where do you find them? And where do you find them in concentration? So just in the chat, what type of places do we think about when we think of where we can find, our clients? What type of locations can we go to? Are there, industry magazines that we might be able to utilize? Are there social media groups that we can go to? When we think about where they are, it then allows us to really start to tune into how we get that message to them. So where can you find your target base in concentration? And what is it that you are offering, and what is it they want to buy? Now, there's a really interesting context here. And by the way, on Friday, tomorrow at 3 o'clock, do jump onto my website. We've got a guy called Jeffrey Gitomer, who is he's probably one of the most famous salespeople in the world, and he's got the #1 sales book of all time. But the interesting point, he has a phrase of, people love to buy, they just don't love to be sold to. If you think about that, how interesting is that as a concept? People love to buy, but you don't want to be sold to. So what does that look like for you? What is it that they want that you're offering? And how do you make sure that you get it in front of them? At the moment, we need to sell with compassion. And interestingly, if you're interested in that, dive onto my Facebook page and go back, I think, just pre-Christmas to scroll down. And I've got a Marketing with Compassion website on there that you can dive into. So it's worthwhile just diving in and having a look at that. Then why? Why do they want to buy it from you? What are the benefits? Remember I said about this earlier on, that story brand will really help with this question. Now, although I talked about earlier on about not asking the why question, in this context, it makes a lot of sense. Is why do they want to come and buy from you? What is it that you offer that is going to inspire them to buy from you? What does the why look like? And again, jot down some notes, get some ideas. How? How will you communicate to them? How will you let them know what it is that you do? Now, if you just take those elements there in terms of just building a marketing campaign alone, and you can have multiple campaigns running, suddenly you can find yourself in a place where actually, do you know what, we can really start to tune into our marketplace and start to tune into who we want to deal with and how we want to have that conversation with them. Marketing is something that we absolutely must take an interest in. It's something that we really need to make sure that we've got a focus on and that we've got a plan in place. The hours that you spend each week versus the number of pages in your plan, and, meaningful. Obviously, we don't want to just have a plan that has no meaning to it. Has a direct impact in terms of what you start getting coming through as lead generation. So remember, predictable cash flow is the challenge there. So what I want you to do now is go to session 4 on the book. So you can have again at the bottom here, and also then score niche. So we're then going to be going on to niche, and we're going to be scoring this row here. So I'll put a couple of minutes on. Don't overthink it. Dive into it. Get your scores, and then we'll be moving on to have a look through leverage and team. And then I've got a few bits to round up on just to give you some clarity in terms of that scaling up we've been talking about. So back in a couple of minutes. Okay, so again, we'll move on now, and I want to take a look at leverage. So we'll look at leverage next. So leverage is, we're at that point now that we're looking at a business that works. So, a commercial, profitable enterprise that works. So this is all about, it's all about systems. It's all about systemization within the business, and it's an interesting one. I often ask the question, what are the systems within the business? And most of the folk that I talk to don't have systems. They have an intimate understanding of what's up in my mind and my brain, but I don't actually have any systems. Then you got to remember on this one that when we put systems in place, every time we put a system in place, we are creating a higher level of predictability. We're creating a higher level of I guess the team being able to do what the team needs to do without you having to influence and implement in it. If at the moment everything revolves back to you, and it may be that actually part of growing the team, if you don't have a big team or don't have a team at the moment, it doesn't detract from the systems that you can still put in place to leverage what it is you do. I think one of the key things to remember on this one is if you always remember about Look at everything in your business that is routine. Everything in your business that is routine. Now, 80% of the stuff that is routine is systemize it and then humanize the exception. The areas that need to be humanized, where someone needs to have an interaction, an interface to be able to answer a question, to have a conversation, that's fine. Giving people that level of ability and empowering them to do that. But 80% of what you do in your business is routine. Get it systemized. And that might be a script. It could be actually a process. And in fact, we often talk about the 4 key areas of systemization. Using systems and technology, from a CRM to a business management system to a material, management system. There are multiple off-the-shelf systems for pretty much every business that's out there that allow you to do an end-to-end, systems approach to your business. You can have somebody who comes through the marketing point to actually engaging with you, to actually making a sale, to becoming a lifelong customer and getting that repeat business with them, having never met them, through the system. But the system is just obviously, it does what it needs to do. So systems and technology, accounting, the digital front with regards to, what we're doing in our finances, systemize it. It's there to be done. From using Office 365 or Apple, whichever is your preference, multiple ways in which you can use technology to systemize what you do in the business. And then we've got delivery and distribution. So what are you doing in terms of the systems that you need for delivery and distribution? What does that look like in terms of inventory control? What does it look like in terms of stock levels? What does it look like in terms of actually being able to monitor, the fleet? What does it look like in terms of actually, being able to automate certain aspects? There are multiple ways where you can look in terms of the delivery and distribution to create the systemizations and systems that you need in the business. Next on from that, you've got test and measuring and accountancy. So putting the test and measure in place, what systems, and again, when we're looking at this, it could be the KPIs, the key performance indicators, which could be the objective and key responsibilities that we're giving our team. Educating our team, educating the team and getting people educated, again, is another area of systemization that we can focus on. But all of it is really driven in terms of actually creating a predictable manner in which your business will function. Leveraging everything that you do in the business, so that you're not having to be the go-to, business owner. You're not the direct dial for your clients. You're not the direct answer for your, for your team. You're not the one that has to deal with all the business. And I'll talk to you in a little while about the cycle of business when we talk about scaling up and where this all starts to really make sense. So getting to that point is really important. Here's a number of areas that you can focus on with regards to starting to looking at systemization with your business. How-to systems. Very simple how-to system is a flow chart. Have you flow charted your business? Have you been able to do a flow chart in terms of what happens, when a customer comes in and what is that, that journey that they're likely to go on? That's a dead simple way of starting to get a real focus in terms of the systemization in the business, because it will then tell you exactly where the bottlenecks are, where you need to then focus. So systemization of the business. Let's go back to the business scorecard again. And now we're going up to the third row, and we're gonna spend probably a minute or so just completing the leverage questionnaire, or the leverage business scorecard. So over to you, folks. Just a minute or so, that's all. So work fast. We're doing good. Just looking at those 4 areas: people, education, delivery, distribution, accounting, test and measuring, and systems and technologies. How are you scoring across the business? And I'm sure there's going to be some clear areas for here to start focusing on that systemization. Give yourself back some more time. Another 20 seconds. And don't worry, I know we're moving fairly fast through this. I've got you'll all get a share of the recording, so you'll be able to go back and watch this over at your leisure. Okay. So let's have a look at the next one. So the fourth level that we talk about is building the team. And this is where we start to get to a point where the business is working without you. That's the intention of building a team. Here's an interesting statement for you in terms of, most employees are motivated, energetic, committed, enthusiastic, and loyal. Hands up if you see that in your business, if you would agree with that. Interesting. Not quite so many hands going up. And maybe that's why. A little bit tongue-in-cheek there, but actually I think it's something that Tom Peters has said, which is quite poignant. So I want to share the analogy of Jim Collins here with regards to how we start to focus on building the right team, getting the right people in your business. When we start looking about this, think of your business as the bus, and you've got a whole series of chairs on the bus. You've got your driver, and the reality is what Jim Collins, who wrote the book Good to Great, what he talked about is getting the wrong people off your bus. Now, it's one of the most challenging things for a business owner to do is to get the wrong people off the bus. Whether it's misspent loyalty, whether it's an element of fear, concern, and not wanting to confront somebody, whatever the circumstances might be. The reality of this is that when you get the wrong people off your bus, it lifts a huge weight off your shoulders. You just feel better. And don't forget, I think right now, today, we have all of us got an obligation to make sure that our businesses are operating in the very, very best way that they can. So getting the wrong people off the bus is key. Putting them on the right seats is really important. And then, we look at the analogy of having the right conductor, so the right management, the right leader in terms of maybe the driver, so that we know the journey, the destination is set. The reality on this is when we start focusing in terms of getting the right people on the bus, it has a dramatic impact in terms of actually, developing the growth of your business and improving the engagement of your team. We focus on 7 keys to building a winning team. It starts off with strong leadership. Now, we had a big session at the beginning where I was hoping to get you just to do a little bit of self-reflection. Now, in the same context here, how do you score yourself as a leader? What's that level of strong leadership for you? How clear is the common goal for the entire organization? Does everybody in the team know what this quarter's goal is, this week's goal is? Do they know what their goal is for tomorrow? How clear is that communicated to them? And what are the rules of the game? Now, I set out the rules of the game for the presentation when we started first thing this afternoon. Now, here's a reality for you and something for you to think about. The rules of the game are written in your business, whether you've got them written down or not. The reality is if you don't have them written down, your team will be working to their own rules. What you want to do is make sure that the rules of the game are the ones that meet and align to the culture and the values of the business. Is there an action plan that people are understanding and know where to see what it is that they've got to achieve? That's in play. Do you support risk taking? Are you engaging your team to the point that they know what decisions they can and can't make? And do we operate a business where we seek always to have 100% involvement and inclusion? We don't create artificial silos in the business, but rather we look at actually interoperability. One of the things that I find really fascinating when I work with a board of directors is this context of a boardroom where it's a show and tell, where the department heads, the directors within the business come and they just show what it is that they've been working on. And there is no involvement or inclusion in anybody else's department. It's very much a case of this is what I've got to do. This is what I'll share. But actually, when we break those barriers down, we remove silos and we get much more engagement. And then the final one is always seek to be doing, and offering ongoing training and development for your team, whether that might be an internal mentoring program, whether it's a case of, actually internal training, whether it's a case of getting one of your team or team members on apprenticeships, whatever that looks like, it's an investment in your team and your future. And it creates a high level of loyalty. Now, when we go pre-COVID, engagement was at an all-time low in the UK. We were at 8%. And this was from Deloitte, who do the State of the Global Workforce. Now, lots has happened since this came out, but this goes to give you an insight and recognize that actually the UK is not great in terms of its engaged workforce. And I think we'll have probably seen, and certainly from what I've watched, the ebb and flow of workforces over the last 12 months will have an impact. People want to get back to normal. The reality is there is no new normal. There's a different focus going forward. So what does this look like for us when we start to determine what is our engagement level in our business? Anyway, let's go back to the business scorecard. And this time there's the 3 boxes of recruitment system, employee engagement, and the 7 keys. I'm going to put 30 seconds on the clock for you. I want you to score yourself. And then I'm going to spend the last 15 minutes just wrapping up and giving you some challenges to, what we can do in terms of the scalability in the businesses. So over to you, 30 seconds. Let's do the team score. Okay, so we've gone through the 4 steps so far, and what I want to really share with you now, I just want to start to conclude today's session with regards to looking at scalability. I want to make really clear that to scale your business, you can have a significant impact in your business in the next 90 days if you choose to do so on mastery, niche, leverage, and team, just by putting together a real focused plan of action of how you're going to deliver on that. And it's kind of tough. It's kind of tough, but if you look at it in the context of actually having that obligation to get your business to where you want to get it to grow and develop, to reach the goals that you set and desire, to maybe even we've used the phrase of the bounce back plan for a reason, to bounce back from what has happened last year, then one of the things that we want to focus on are those 4 areas, those 4 steps: mastery, the foundation, looking at predictable cash flow within the niche, getting the systems within the business. And it doesn't need to be fully systemized, but what we can start to do is get areas and key areas systemized and then start building that team. And it might be building an internal and external team, or starting with an external team. But the reality on this is if we focus on 4 areas, we then find ourselves in a place where we can start to look at the scalability of a business. Now, the four areas of scaling any business, whatever you want to do, and really scaling business is about, how do I open up a new venue? How do I take myself to a new region? How do I actually introduce myself to a new country? Sky's the limit on this when you really start to focus on actually how you grow and develop your business. And if you want to dive into some real insight into that, then have a read of Michael Gerber's The E-Myth, and then go and have a look at how franchises operate, because they are the epitome of well-structured, good franchises. Not all good franchises are the epitome of good business. So I want you to think about your business and just think, what is the size of the opportunity? How big can my business be? What is the true opportunity that I can have with this business? Is it just this business and me doing it, or actually can I get this to a point where actually I can start to replicate it? I could maybe open up a new location, or I could license what I do to another partner, or I could even franchise it and sell the franchise. What is that size of opportunity? Secondly is how marketable it is. Now, what do I mean by how marketable it is really simple. If you say, for instance, you own a shoe shop, how marketable is a shoe shop? Hugely marketable. And the reality on that is because everybody needs shoes. So in terms of what it is you do, how marketable is it? For me, I firmly believe that every business owner needs a business coach. So I can see the real marketability of it. And in the course of time, that's just going to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. It's the same for you in your business. What is the level of marketability? How leveraged can you make your business? How systemized? Can you create the business manual that actually is the operating manual? This is what we do. And it's a written manual, by the way. This is what we do. This is how we operate. So when we start to think about this, we come up with this whole overall focus in terms of just how scalable your business is. Now, I firmly believe that every business has got the ability to scale, just not every business owner, unless we start to shift our mindset towards actually developing the opportunity to grow our business. And some of that is born through the actual cycle of business. So what does the cycle of business actually look like? Well, all too often it's about the owner dealing with the team and actually giving the direction and being on speed dial, the owner being on speed dial to the customer, And actually the owner then having to deal with all the history and doing everything that the business operator needs to do or feel they need to do. Well, it's the wrong way. It's the challenging way of doing it, and it's not a scalable way of doing it, because you still sit in there as the owner. Whereas actually, when we start to look at the cycle of business, we can then start to actually put you in a position where you start to identify yourself outside of this cycle, in a place where you can start to focus on building, the systems, engaging the team and focusing on what it is they need to do, to have the right marketing in there, to deal with the customers and have the team deal with the customers, that the business comes through. And then suddenly you're in a place where actually I can sit at the top here thinking about where the scale opportunities are for the business, how I move myself to the next level, where do I move myself to the next level, and so on. Does that make sense? When you look at this, scaling a business, those 4 areas, mastery, niche, leverage, and team. Focus on them for 100 days. Get some real groundwork done on those in the next 100 days. And, pick maybe 1 or 2, or 3 things that you need to focus in each of those areas to actually start to transform your business from where you are now to getting some real solid structure and building this cycle of business. And you will see the scalability opportunities of what you're doing. But I've got to tell you, it's hard work, but it's rewarding. It's incredibly rewarding. So it's kind of goes back to that question, that third question: what's holding you back right now? What's getting in the way right now? So just take a couple of moments just to go to the synergy and results and just score yourself. Now, I wouldn't be surprised at all at this level if they're low scores. That's understandable. But just put a score into those 3 boxes. Can your business work without you right now? What's the growth opportunity in terms of more outlets or other businesses? And what about the investment as you then, when you get to results, you then start to work and move into this entrepreneurial area where passive income, property, shares, and bonds become an element of focus for you to grow your independent wealth, to grow your independence in wealth, to become financially independent, through your business, which is all achievable. It'd be interesting to see how you score on those. Hey, now once you've done those scores, and if you're happy to share, add them all up. Funny enough, it all adds up to 200. How did you score? What was your score out of the full complement? Because once we get an understanding of where we are now, and we can make a commitment to where we want to be. And my challenge to you is actually, putting that 90-day clock and that 90-day timer on and going for it, doing it. Don't hold back. Be in the now, make the commitment to the actions that you need to take to go forward. Now, I've got an offer for you in terms of, getting another insight to where the business is right now. So there's an offer that we have. It's a questionnaire you can fill in. You can scan the code in just a moment. It's called the Value Builder Score. And what I'll do is you'll get the questionnaire. You can go and complete the questionnaire, and you'll benchmark across, there's somewhere in the region of probably 36 to 40,000 businesses globally. And it will show you where you are across, 8 key areas. So you just answer the questionnaire, and there's the QR code. You'll get your score in terms of how your business, and this is about business valuation, by the way, in how your business is valued. And then, one of the things that we're able to do is sit down and actually take you through the Value Builder Score. Excuse me. So just in conclusion today, we've covered quite a lot of ground. It's been pretty hard and fast. I'm going to make sure that in the next couple of days you'll get access to the recording. You'll get the actual workbook itself, and I'm gonna fire in there there's a 5-way chart where actually you can have a look at some of these strategies and really make a commitment in that respect. All I ask, when this is finished, you're going to get an email come through for a survey, and the survey will ask you whether or not you want to have that coaching session with me. Now, I'm not here to make friends. I'm not here to stroke your ego, but what I am here to do is help you make a commitment to grow your business. If you're open to the idea that coaching might be something that is of interest to you, and if you, here's the thing, if you don't know, then you've got nothing to lose. But we'll sit down, we'll go through what you've taken as your learnings from today, and I will coach you through to getting that underway and started. And then if there is some interest thereafter, then that's a different conversation. And there are multiple different ways that I might be able to help and support you. But in the first instance, I would like to be able to, offer you that introductory complimentary coaching session. It's the only way you'll truly know. And if you're worried about, well, I don't know, I can afford it, then, park those worries for the moment. Don't have a concern, because that is immediately a limiting belief. Just have the coaching session. I'm not going to force you to say yes. I don't use any sales voodoo techniques or anything of that nature. I simply coach you. And at the end of that session, you'll go away with an opportunity to focus on what it is that you need to focus on, to deliver the actions and activities that you set out to deliver on, and a commitment that you make to me. And it's as simple as that. Look, ladies and gentlemen, it's been my absolute pleasure this afternoon. I've got to thank you for your engagement and your commitment.